Hello world and welcome to episode 13 of the Top Split. I'm your host Alex McKellar, and joining me once again today and for his first of our short format splash and dash episodes is my new co-host Alex John. AJ, welcome back and welcome aboard.
Yeah, g'day Alex. Exciting for the new format.
Certainly is. I usually give these episodes titles, or well, realistically, it's the name. I name them after my guests, but as we're planning to do this regularly, I wanted to give it something a little different. So, and Alex didn't kind of work, and I thought of AJ and McBeardface, but we've gone with Splash and Dash as I think we agree that it's the right sort of image for what we're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, nice, short, sharp, and hopefully we just cover a few topics and have a bit of fun.
That's right. So, in the spirit of naming, I'll take Dash and you've got Splash, all right? So, anyway, seriously though, for those of you playing along with us at home, the Splash and Dash format is a change in the typical Top Split episodes that I have been doing. It'll be shorter, focus more on topical iRacing stuff, and all going to plan, I should say, far more frequent. AJ and I are planning at this stage to get together every couple of weeks and shoot the breeze on all things iRacing that sort of grab our attention along the way. We're also looking for you guys to help us out, to let us know what things you are interested in and what you might like us to discuss. You can reach out to us, of course, on the Top Split Facebook page, our Discord or YouTube channel, or live on the Twitch channels that AJ and myself both have. We're always happy to interact. And I have to say the feedback we've been receiving lately about the recent episodes has been pretty epic and certainly very much appreciated. AJ, welcome aboard, as I said. You've also joined me recently in the Top Split TV commentary booth for some of the recent rounds of Monday Night Lights. First off with that, how have you been finding it?
Yeah, I've really been enjoying that. I I dare say it's nearly more fun in some ways than actually racing. Like getting to see the other guys and comment on them and sort of know that you're putting something together that they're going to get enjoyment out of. So I've really enjoyed that aspect of it, Alex.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, that's certainly my experience with it as well. I've enjoyed giving something back to the community. It gives you a good sense of, satisfaction is not the right word, but I get a sense of enjoyment out of contributing. Look, I don't know about you, but I think people get a lot from it as well. What do you reckon a broadcast brings to a series like that?
Yeah, well, I reckon it certainly helps with like participation and a sense of community as well. Like it's that one time slot to bring everyone together and they get to watch each other back on the broadcast, and it just I mean we're all aspiring to be sort of you know professional racers, whether it's in a skip barber or you want to go all the way to the F1 level. Um, to have that sort of realistic broadcast aspect just sort of fulfills that role and desire that we seek to be real race car drivers, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I tell you, I have taken to watching some of the broadcasts back on my television in the lounge room over lunchtime. And look, not to blow our own trumpet, and I'm sure it's across the board with the other broadcasters as well. But the quality of the footage that you can capture and stick up on YouTube, with the overlays of the broadcast style overlays and what have you, it looks more and more like a real race. And I've got to tell you, the first time that my wife saw one, she actually she asked me if it was a real race and why was I talking on the telly and all this sort of stuff. So, I think in terms of adding to the experience of the simulator, it's pretty awesome. And what I've always set out to do is and I've said it a lot on the broadcast themselves, is build a platform for the local ANZ club guys in particular to have a crack at the official season. I mean, the Monday Night Lights things aside, there's some good bragging rights in that, but in terms of the official season, I know that one of our MNL favourites, Enzo Cantor, he's won, I think, 3 official seasons on the back of Monday Night Lights participation. So it's really possible. So to have that sort of platform available to the local guys is awesome. So, but one thing I was going to ask you was, have you found in the commentary, or looking at it from a different perspective, that you've found yourself using any different tools or apps to help with the coverage?
Uh, not really. I have picked up JRT, and I'd never had looked at that before. But JRT mainly is the one I'm using, but just trying to keep up with what's going on. Like I couldn't have too many apps going because by the time I've got the YouTube broadcast going, my iRacing broadcast going, um, JRT's up, and then you might be watching someone on Twitch as well, and just trying to keep a track of what's going on is enough trouble for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I can appreciate that. When I started out commentating with Bernie doing the broadcasting on RRTV, I found it similar. Although I got to tell you, just for a bit of insight for those of you at home, I run a 4 monitor setup here. I have the race itself on the center screen of the 3 across, like triple screen setup, like for when those of you who run triples for racing. Then I actually run iRacing in a single screen mode at that point to do the broadcast. On my right hand screen, I have a couple of things. I have Discord so that we can do the interviews, and obviously that's where AJ and I are talking. I have the broadcast overlay software, which has camera positioning. It has telemetry. It has information about the race session and what have you in it. On the other screen, I have on the left hand screen, I'll have the YouTube stuff. I'll have the JRT. For those of you who don't know, JRT stands for Joel Real Timing. Check it out. It's an awesome telemetry app. I use it when I race. It's great for a whole bunch of things. And then I'll have a track map up sometimes, although Nords this week I didn't because there's 160 corners, and actually Tim Awema was in the booth and he had it up and he managed to pull out some of those corner names. He did really well.
Tim did a
Yeah.
great job. I wasn't too sad that I missed that one because oh my goodness, having to learn that track. Oh,
Yeah, look, I can recognise the sections of the tracks, no worries, but I had no chance with the names. And then up the top, I'll have, of course, the broadcast software itself and the live chat to see what's going on with people at home. So it's a pretty complicated animal there. Then when you throw into the fact that you're trying to call the action and move the cameras around and what have you. So every now and then you hear me talking out loud with regards to what's going on in the control booth anyway. But yeah, so look, that's a bit of an insight, folks. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it, mate, because I think you're bringing a good, fresh perspective to it and a bit of fun along the way. So we are going to talk a few topics today. AJ, did you have any in mind?
yeah, well, the big one that I've seen on the forums this week was the new Dallara F3
Yeah.
Formula car. Yeah, so there's a bit of controversy over that one as well.
Yeah, look, I put that under the category of new toys. iRacing have announced the new car, of course, much to the delight of some, probably including myself. I saw it was an open wheeler. The F3 variant coming. I was surprised, AJ. I don't know about you, but it sort of came from nowhere, yet it's in the release coming up next month.
Yeah, well, I mean that's how iRacing like to do things sometimes, isn't it? Just drop something on its members, but um, yeah, I mean it was a bit of a shock, wasn't it? Because everyone's been screaming out for something that will bridge that gap between the Formula Renault and the Pro Mazda and Formula One.
Yeah,
And then yeah, and I mean, like, this is the thing, this is the topical discussion, is that we've got the Formula 3 and it's going to be possibly similar to the Pro Mazda and Formula Renault.
yeah, well, that's right. Talk around the traps is that the performance will be somewhere between those two. Let's call them mid-level. They're a bit above the Skippies. Of course, Skippies your entry-level training type vehicle. You then move up to your Formula Renault and Pro Mazda, which are pretty similar cars by and large. But then there's always been that massive jump up to the Formula One car, and for the longest time, the community, well, the open wheeler and iRacing community more broadly have been calling out for something to bridge that gap. But what does this car mean in reality? So for me, I don't know. I looked at some of the talk around and some of the specs and the times in real life terms, and from what I read and what I've seen around the place. At Spa, for example, there was the F3 was about 8 seconds in front of the Formula Renault 2 this season, and 14 seconds or so behind the F1. So it is legitimately in between the two. But is it enough, AJ? Is it a big enough jump?
Yeah.
Do you think?
I don't know. I think from what I've read, the time's going to come from the additional downforce. I think maybe it's got an extra 20 or 30 horsepower, but it's mainly additional downforce that's going to bring it. And that's tosses up like another question: is it going to drive like a Pro Mazda with the more sort of higher downforce feel to it?
Yeah, I was going to
Yeah,
say, mate, I'm not going to complain if it drives like a Pro Mazda because that's probably one of, if not my favourite car to drive on the service. But the big question, I guess, for me on top of that is this another dead series in the making? I mean, there have been several great cars released in recent memory, and I look at the hype around, say, the Nissan and the Audi in the Camel series. And you think about the release videos for those. I mean, a lot of people are talking about the release video for the F3, but you compare that, which was like what 20 seconds or something, after people waited 5 hours to see it. But then you had the Nissan and the Audi, both had these historic videos. I mean, I think they had not Jack Brabham, Jeff Brabham, featuring for an actual historic driver of the Audi
Mm,
promoted, and there was so much hype around these two cars, and they put them in a mixed class racing series or a mixed class category, and I don't know if it even lasted a season before it was dead. What does this car mean
yeah.
in that context?
I no, I think this one will be fine. But it's it really depends on what iRacing does with it because they've dropped they've dropped that they're bringing an F3 out, but they haven't really said what the specifications are. People have sort of just figured that out. It could be more powerful. We
Mm.
don't know, so it could be even faster than what we think. Um, but they haven't really said anything other than just that we've got an F3 coming. So whether they uh, and and that's the thing. Like then you've got to sort of make hard decisions. Do you get rid of the Formula Renault category and the Pro Master category, and retire those cars, and then bring the F3 in? And I think if they did that, then it'll be a bumper participation, and I could foresee it going for for more than one season. I think it would become a staple of racing. But yeah, they've got to make that decision as to what they want to do with the other cars.
Yeah, well, that's the other question on my mind as well: is will this divide the existing open wheeler community further? I mean, the Formula Renault arrived again to much hype, and I remember the first season of that was crazy with participation. Having said that, in my opinion, it was plagued somewhat by what I would suggest is a pretty un-iRacing like toxicity in the community that season. The prime example for me was, we all know about the Skip Barber 2K Cup. Well, some of you may or may not remember there was a Formula Renault 2K Cup that came in amongst the hype of the Formula Renault's initial season, but in part because of some of the elements of that community and what it was shaping up like. It was cancelled before the end. It was mid-season when it got cancelled, I should say. So, and then you got to consider about the Pro Mazda. Again, one of, if not my favourite car to drive on iRacing, yet you can get an official race pretty regularly. But aside from a very dedicated group of enthusiasts, I'm sad to say the series, oh, I hate to say it, but it barely has a pulse at times, right? And then in amongst those two that have they're on par, those two cars, right? And they've split that the open wheeler community to some degree, or to a large degree, in terms of participation and what have you. And then you throw in an F3 car that looks to be a potentially a minor step up in performance, if only, like you say, with the downforce. Um, what happens? Does that community break away further? Do they retire the Mazda, much to the sadness of the guys that love it, or
It's
what do they do?
Yeah, and it's sort of a problem with it with the way that the content's released with iRacing, and that you pay. I mean, it's not an insignificant amount of money for one car.
Mm.
I mean, what's it work out for us in Australia? It's probably,
15
I don't know,
bucks or
like
something.
$15. Yeah, probably a bit more now with the exchange rate. And so you sort of got to ask, like, how long do the cars need to stay current these days?
Mm,
Um, I mean, I had a look and I think the Aston Martin GT1 car that was only released in 2015.
yep.
Um, yeah, so it's 3 years old now though, and yet there's still a GT1 series. So do we need to be trying to drag out the life of these cars, or should we be viewing these sorts of cars as like the 1 year DLC type thing? Like that this is what's come out this year, so this is what they should push and make popular. And then uh, I don't know whether they make the other cars free or whether they maybe sell them for half price, but like realize that maybe they should be, keeping everything fresh rather than sort of, they bring in one thing and then they bring in another and then it just, I mean, there's lots of options, but then at the end of the day, it sort of will delete the competition, I think, as well.
Yeah, it does dilute the competition. I mean, potentially they just, turn off these old series and leave them for the likes of people running leagues and what have you. I mean, in terms of the open wheeler community, I'd love to race, for example, the Lotus 79. I can't get an official race unless I'm willing to get up at 2 or 3 in the morning. We're just spreading that user base so thin. Um, I can see potentially this season one there being a massive influx drawn in by the shiny new toy, but what happens to the Pro Mazda and the Formula Renault community during that season? And then again, what happens after the tide washes out and
Mm,
everyone sort of loses that shine on the new thing?
yeah. Well, for me personally, I think that they should just scrap the Pro Mazda and the Formula Renault. Like I've got both of
Oh,
them, so
controversy in the first
yeah.
splash and dash.
I've got both of them, so I've paid for them, so I'm
mm,
taking a loss as well.
mm,
But yeah, I mean, like if there's this new one, I'm going to buy it anyway,
yeah.
because I want to try it out. Um, so I'd be happier knowing that if I'm going to buy the new one, then that is the only series, and that's where everyone's going to be funneled into,
Mm.
so that I get a decent amount of participation and competition, and scrap the other ones. But um, yeah, I mean the same could be said for a lot of series. But that's what I'd like to see with this one at least. But I have seen on the forums, some people say, bring in the battle of the little wings or whatever it was called. Yeah.
Yes,
That week
yes,
13 series.
yes.
Yeah. So maybe we could do that as well.
I was thinking about the multi-class. You look at the likes of the GT3 series and the GTE series. You got a lot of similar cars there, and they're some of the most popular series around. Work on the balance of power and unite those communities rather than dividing them. Which series misses out? Because right now you can go from a Formula Renault race to a Pro Mazda race. Each series runs every 2 hours, right, and they're offset. How do they introduce the F3s? Which series loses participation out of it? Now you say, can the Pro Mazda? Or I've seen a lot of talk about the new Pro Mazda coming out. Of course, the existing one has the
Mm.
rotary engine. The real life one's moved away from the rotary engine, and it's a different spec car. They can't just keep bringing out the same
Yeah.
spec car or the equal performance car over and over again. Surely not. I mean,
Well,
mate,
that's probably what made it surprising as well that there was the F3, because there was talk that the Pro Mazda talk was months ago that they were working on something. Um, and yeah, then we end up with an F3. Like you're just like,
yeah.
what's
well,
going on?
well, the other talk, of course, was the Formula Renault 3.5. I think, which in real life is like a V8, and
Mm.
really powerful, and that is probably a legit step up from obviously from the Formula
Yeah,
Renault,
definitely.
and bridging the gap between the middle tier and the top tier racing there. But there again, aside from the bigger downforce and what have you, is it? It would be on par, I guess, with something like the Lotus 79, right? So again, are you duplicating
Mm.
content there? But ultimately, I wonder if it'll help or hurt the iRacing open wheeler community, at least in the middle tier races. The entry level Skip Barber series, of course, is alive and kicking with races going official and splitting nearly every hour of all but most of the desperately unpopular tracks. For the but for those mid power open
Yeah,
wheeler series, they're set to get a shake up, right?
yeah, um, yeah. Like that's right. But I think with the participation of something like Skip Barber series, and you've been racing in the Ferrari GT3 series, I think, as
Yeah, a
well.
little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that they would benefit, or iRacing would benefit from having um, more of those sort of short race series, like
Yes.
the Ferrari GT3. Like, um, I don't know. I think a lot of the problem with something like a Lotus 79, not only is it's an older car and it's arguably a tough car to drive fast.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that's got that going against it to start with, and I think the more modern cars like the F3, it's not going to have that same sort of problem because it's a modern car, and people gravitate towards that. Whereas the older cars like the Audi A90 and that are more niche. But I feel like when you start getting up into those sorts of B series, the longer races maybe um, can put people off a little bit. You've got to invest a bit more into those sorts of series. So yeah, I'd like to see them do more with like the Ferrari GT3 type stuff where we could have some short, 15, 20-minute races and thinking about like how we run the Friday night race club, which
Yep.
is our, Friday night league, 5 races, 5 different cars, 20-minute races. Um, and we rotate it every season. Maybe iRacing could bring in something like that where they, this season it's the Ferrari GT3. Next season they could rotate something in like the Lotus 79, for instance, to get participation going and just make short, fun races that everyone can just jump into, fix setup. And I think there's lots of things that iRacing can do to improve participation in that way. And it's just going to be up to iRacing what they do as to whether the F3 takes off, or whether the other series die, or what happens.
Yeah, look, the Ferrari fixed setup series I think's been a big success for iRacing. I do compare it, however, to something like the what are the Radicals, which went to a
Yeah,
similar format, right? They went to fixed setup and actually made the car free, and everyone there was a big sort of jumping on board period, and then everyone realised the thing's actually quite hard to drive. The setups were, not always easy to work your way through, and they were fixed, so it was the same for everyone. I think you are onto something though when you say have a series. It's almost like a week 13 thing, but that runs
mm,
for the whole season, right? There's still I rating and safety rating on the line, but it's something different. We talked about the Little Wing series where they do sometimes on week 13 where you got the Formula Renault and the Promaster chucked in together. That would be something that's really good, I think. Um,
yeah,
I think that short format with a fixed setup is really appealing and opens it up to people that may not otherwise want to do it. But I do think it comes down to the car. The Ferrari is going to be a popular car, whereas the Radical probably wasn't. They made it free and they still couldn't get to really kick a lot of life into that series. So
mm.
anyway, it'll
Uh,
be interesting. Sorry, mate, you go ahead.
yeah. No, I was just gonna say, like with that, it's a good example of keeping the content fresh and new. Like the Radical was new for everyone for a season, wasn't it? And the participation was really good. Still better than what it was,
Absolutely.
but
Well, it was completely dead, right?
yeah, exactly. But yeah, like that's a good example of keeping stuff fresh and new. And so, if they want to move to this F3, then bring the F3 out, scrap the ProMaster and the Formula Renault, and keep it fresh and new. And maybe they need to be looking at bringing out this sort of content every sort of at least every year, or changing it up, like not just keeping with the status quo all of the time. I think that would work for them and
Absolutely,
for
mate.
us.
Mate, you're hurting my heart every time you say scrap the Pro Mazda, but you probably, you know what? You're probably not far off the mark when you think about other games. Maybe we're just clinging on to these things for nostalgia's sake as much as anything. You think about other games where you get a new map and or a new gun or whatever it is, and you don't mourn for the loss of the old stuff. You embrace the
Right.
new and you move on. So maybe there's something in that. I guess time will tell. But certainly those mid-powered open wheelers series are set to get a shake-up. Personally, I love the open wheelers and will no doubt add this one to my garage. I'm looking forward to driving and racing the F3 car at some stage after it comes out. But the question is, will it hold up and capture the hearts and minds? Only time will tell. But speaking of time, that's probably all we have for now. Like I said, we're going to keep it short and sharp, splash and dash. We plan on releasing episodes fortnightly, whether they be in this or the longer form that I've been doing, where I'll be reaching out to the interesting people in the iRacing community as I come across them. If there is anyone that you'd like to hear on the show, please reach out to us, as I said, on Facebook or on Discord, or when either AJ or I are streaming on Twitch. AJ, like me, you are on Twitch, streaming your races, of course, in virtual reality. Where can folks find you?
Yeah, AJ_77, that's me.
Perfect. I'm, of course, at Top Split TV on Twitch, and where I'd love to, of course, hear your thoughts on the podcast, the new format, and make sure you let us know what you'd like to hear our thoughts on. I know I was asked on stream by Joe this week about the new F3 cars, and it certainly got me thinking, and I'm glad we had the opportunity today to have a bit of a chat about it. But I'll leave the links to the places you can find us in the description of the podcast, so please reach out and get in touch. I promise we won't bite. Until we next meet, on behalf of my new co-host Alex John, I've been your host Alex McKellar, and you've been listening to The Top Split. Ciao for now.